There's a specific moment almost everyone who has been love-bombed remembers. Not the grand gesture, not the flowers or the 3 a.m. text that says, "I've never felt this way before." It's smaller than that. It's the moment they told a friend how happy they were, and the friend's face didn't match their excitement. That mismatch is worth paying attention to, because it's often the first honest signal in a situation designed to short-circuit honest signals. Love bombing isn't a myth invented by internet psychology accounts. It's a documented pattern in relationship research, and it shows up in contexts far beyond romance. Cult recruitment, multi-level marketing groups, even some workplace cultures use a version of it. The mechanism is almost always the same. Overwhelming, fast-moving affection or approval delivered before trust has actually been earned, designed to create a bond before your judgment has had time to catch up. To understand why it works, you have to understand what it's exploiting. Human beings are wired to respond to warmth and attention. Attachment researchers have spent decades showing that closeness and validation activate the same reward circuitry involved in other powerful reinforcers. When someone showers you with attention, your brain registers it as a rewarding, almost narcotic experience. That's not a flaw in you. That's just how connection is supposed to feel when it's real and it's earned gradually. The problem is speed. Genuine intimacy is built through a slow accumulation of small, consistent proof. Someone remembers a detail you mentioned once. Someone shows up when they say they will. Someone respects a boundary the first time you set it without needing you to repeat it. Trust, in other words, is evidence-based. It's built from a pattern of small, verifiable moments, stacked over time. Love bombing skips the evidence and goes straight for the emotional conclusion. You are told you're the most incredible person the other person has ever met, often within days. You're told this is fate, that nobody has ever understood them the way you do, that they've never felt this way before. The intensity feels like proof of depth. But intensity and depth are not the same thing. And one of the quiet skills of emotional maturity is learning to tell them apart. Picture a woman named Elena, 3 weeks into dating someone new. He's texting her good morning and good night every day, sending her playlists he made specifically for her, telling his mother about her already. Her friends notice she seems a little dazed, in the good way, the way people look when they're falling hard. But there's a smaller detail almost nobody notices at first. He gets quietly irritated when she takes more than 20 minutes to reply. He frames it as missing her. It's actually the earliest form of a leash. This is where love bombing reveals its function. It isn't really about affection. It's about acceleration and access. If someone can make you feel chosen, extraordinary, and safe faster than any relationship reasonably should, they've also built a bond fast enough that when the tone eventually shifts, and in these patterns it usually does, you already have something to lose. You've already told your friends. You've already reorganized parts of your schedule around them. Withdrawing starts to feel far more costly than staying and hoping the early version comes back. That's the twist worth sitting with. Love bombing frequently isn't the whole strategy. It's frequently phase 1. Setting up a dynamic researchers describe as intermittent reinforcement, where affection becomes unpredictable rather than absent. Unpredictable reward, it turns out, is one of the most powerful things there is for keeping someone hooked. Behavioral studies going back generations have shown that a reward given inconsistently creates stronger, harder-to-break engagement than a reward given every single time. It's the same principle that makes slot machines so effective. The brain doesn't disengage from inconsistency. It leans in, trying to chase the version of the good feeling it already tasted. There's a reason this pattern is so hard to resist even when you intellectually understand it. Novelty itself is chemically rewarding. The early period of any strong connection, romantic or otherwise, comes with a natural surge of excitement that has nothing to do with manipulation at all. That surge is real, and it happens in healthy relationships too. What separates a manipulative version from an authentic one usually isn't the presence of that excitement. It's whether the excitement is being used to build something or used to bypass something. In a healthy dynamic, the early spark eventually settles into steadier ground, and both people seem comfortable with that settling. In a love-bombing dynamic, the intensity is maintained deliberately, almost like a performance that can't be allowed to end, because the moment it ends, the other person worries you'll start noticing things more clearly. None of this means every fast, intense start to a relationship is manipulative. Some people are simply enthusiastic, expressive, and quick to feel strongly. Genuine chemistry exists, and treating every early compliment as a red flag would make it impossible to ever let anyone in. The distinction isn't the intensity itself, it's what happens when you introduce a boundary into that intensity. Here's a practical filter worth using. Early in any relationship, whether romantic, professional, or platonic, try gently testing for friction. Say no to something small. Take longer than usual to respond once. Bring up a mild disagreement. Someone whose warmth is genuine will usually absorb that friction with only minor discomfort because their sense of you isn't built on you being flawless or endlessly available. Someone using love bombing as a tactic tends to respond very differently. You'll often see a flicker of coldness, guilt-tripping, or a sudden intensifying of affection specifically timed to pull you back into agreement. That whiplash, warmth followed swiftly by punishment for autonomy, is one of the more reliable signals to pay attention to, always understood as a pattern to notice rather than a courtroom verdict on someone's character. Consider a workplace version of this because the pattern isn't confined to romance. A new employee named Marcus joins a company, and within his first week, the founder is telling him he's the most talented hire they've made in years, inviting him to exclusive meetings, hinting at a leadership track most people wait years for. It feels incredible. It also, quietly, makes it much harder for Marcus to raise concerns 3 months later when the unpaid overtime starts, because he's already been made to feel uniquely chosen, and chosen people don't want to believe they've been chosen for the wrong reasons. What makes this pattern so difficult to spot from the inside is that it doesn't feel like manipulation while it's happening. It feels like being seen. That's precisely the point. The people most susceptible aren't naive or insecure, whatever the popular narrative suggests. Often, it's the opposite. People who are used to earning affection through effort, who don't usually receive uncomplicated admiration, can find intense early attention almost disarming precisely because it's unfamiliar. So the practical skill isn't suspicion, it's pacing. Real connection, of almost any kind, can typically survive being slowed down. If you ask for more time before making a big decision, and the other person treats that request as a betrayal rather than a reasonable pause, that reaction is more informative than almost anything they've said. Genuine people adjust to your pace. People using intensity as a tool tend to need your pace to match theirs, because slowing down gives your judgment room to catch back up with your feelings. There's also a quieter piece of this worth naming, because it rarely gets said out loud. If you recognize yourself in Elena's story, or in Marcus's, the instinct is often to feel foolish, as though you should have seen it sooner. That instinct is worth resisting. The entire design of this pattern is to make perceptive, warm, emotionally generous people feel chosen. It works precisely because it targets qualities that are strengths in any healthy relationship, not weaknesses. Noticing it late doesn't mean your judgment failed. It means the tactic was doing exactly what it was built to do, and recognizing that after the fact is still recognizing it, which is more than most people manage. Rebuilding your own calibration after an experience like this is less about becoming guarded and more about becoming curious again, the way you were before you learned to brace for disappointment. A useful habit is simply narrating what you're noticing to someone outside the relationship, a friend, a sibling, anyone with distance from the situation. Outside perspective doesn't replace your own judgment, but it does something valuable. It gives you a second data point at a moment when your own perception is being deliberately flooded. The next time someone's attention feels almost too good, too fast, too complete, that isn't necessarily a reason for alarm. It's simply a signal to do what evolution built your instincts to do in any high-reward situation. Slow down just enough to see if the story holds up over time, not just in the moment it's being told to you. If this helped you notice something you've lived through but never quite had language for, that's exactly why this channel exists, and there's more of this waiting for you if you decide to stick around.